This will be the second in a series that describes the self-finance program, otherwise known as the Buy Here, Pay Here program. To get to that program, you click on one of the two self-finance buttons. We're going to use the full set, and it looks like this. You can get to where you enter the data. I call it the loan maintenance. Two ways. One is to click on a customer name. The other is to click on the stock number. I prefer the stock number, but that's just me. If you want to find a loan that has been closed, you can click on this inactive button, and that will show you all this information, but for the loans that have been closed. Normally, you're going to want to use the active button. I'm going to click on the same one we did in part 1, which is stock number 2700. So this is a sort of a busy screen. There's a lot to understand here. Here's our stock number. This funny number over here is pointing to the record number of the master index. That's something nobody cares about except me. Here's a description of who the buyer is. The telephone number is an active field. I am told that over the course of a loan, some buyers change their telephone number 4 times. And so this makes it easy for you to go in there and change that number. Here's a short description of the car that's being dealt with. The loan amount was $6,801.25. The loan rate was 10% for 12 months. The scheduled total interest is $375. The scheduled total payments is $7,176. If you were going to pay this off as of today, which is a good year following the beginning of the loan, you'd owe $7,420 because of the interest. Date of sale was 7/24. First payment date was August of 24, and the monthly payment is $598.07. Eventually, you're going to want to close the account. This used to be called close the account, but people got confused with the close screen. So I renamed it as terminate account. Anyway, if you select one of these various reasons, you're closing it early, closing it because of a repo, closing it because of a total loss, or a normal it's paid off thing, you just click the button, and then this will disappear from the active screen. This red thing says that they're past due in their payments. If they are within a pretty reasonable number of the payments, then it'll be green. So here we can see if there's been any interest or fines. There's been none, so they don't show up. Whether there's been any principal paid on the loan, no. Whether there's been any actual payments, no, so far. The scheduled payments are $5,980.70. The grace days are for when a payment is due, we'll give you that many days without doing any kind of penalty. So the next due date, the next payment date, is 6/8 of 2025. This whole screen here is the schedule of payments. So on the 8th of September, we should pay $598.07. At that point, the daily interest is $1.73 a day. So the accumulated interest, this is all assuming you're paying everything on time and with the right amount of money, is $53.38 for that month. The total interest accrued thus far would be $107.63. So over here, you can see that the principal part of the payment is the payment minus the interest, which is $544.69. That brings us down to a balance on the loan of $5,712.74. And we have paid by this time $1,088.51 on the principal. So you can see that goes on all the way to the end of the loan, when in fact they'll have paid $2.86 more on that last payment. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's a way to print the screen. What that does is that'll print out all this data, but not in the same format. But it'll have all the correct data. You can print a coupon for the customer, and that way that they can take home so they know when their next payment is due. And you can print a receipt for the customer. I print 2 receipts per page. You can cut the page in half, give one to the customer, and keep one for your records. When you're all done with this, you can click the close screen. These little guys over here are found in every single one of the various programs. This one on the left says, are there any comments for the vehicle? That is the stock number. This one on the right says, are there any comments for this customer? Red says there aren't any. Green says there are. If I click this one, I get this popping up, and there's a whole bunch of grumps about this customer being such a deadbeat. This area now is where you see the payments that have been made. To enter a payment, you go to this area, you select the date of the payment, which would usually be the current day. So I'm going to say that this payment was made on time on August 8th, made for the correct amount of money, $598.07. When I hit the tab key, I get 3 choices. I can submit that as a payment, or I can say I don't really want to do any of this, and it just resets it. The payment can be in cash, check, or a credit card. Or this could be a penalty. I'm going to describe the penalties later on. So let's assume it's a cash payment. So here on this line, you can see it pretty well matches this line up here. So the payment was $598. The principal was $543, and so on the line. There's these 2 columns over here, which I'll get to in a little while. So if you make another payment next month, which would be on the 9th of the 8th, and $598.07, submit. The problem is, in the buy here, pay here business, virtually no client pay on time, and virtually no clients pay the correct amount of money when they do make a payment. That surprised me when I was first writing this program. I assumed it was going to be like a mortgage, where everybody did pay the correct amount on time. But that's not what's happening. So I had to rewrite the program. It took me about a year. And so part of the way that I figured out how to do this was, instead of doing monthly compounding, which a normal loan does, I'm doing daily compounding, which you can see up here, and this little part here says that's what we're doing. On the contracts, you will see on it that it says daily interest. There's not an awful lot of difference in interest between daily and monthly, but we need to disclose that's what we're doing. Let's just say that this guy comes in with his $588 in October, but he comes in a few days late, and he pays his amount, $598.07. So now this line here doesn't match this line here, because it was 8 days later that he made his payment. So interest accumulated for 8 more days at the rate of $1.73 a month. And so there was more total interest, and that subtracts off from the payment, so there's less on the principal. So the system allows them to come in at any time with any amount of money and make a payment. If they want to make a payment every week, because that's how they get paid weekly, that's fine. If they go to the casino and win big and want to come in and make several payments all at once, that's fine. The system can handle all that. One of the places where we run into a problem, though, is if the customer doesn't come in for quite some time. Let's just say he misses November's payment and comes in December. So he comes in on, let's say, the 12th, and he doesn't have really quite all the money he needs, but he'll put down $300. So here again, the amount going to the principal was very little because the interest has been accumulating all that time. And so the first thing we do is we subtract the interest off from the payment, and whatever's left is what goes on the principal. Let's just say he comes in February because he's skipping January, and he makes a payment of $50. In this case, the interest alone was $82.13, and he only had $50. So he's $32.13 in the hole on the interest. So you, as a dealer, will be unhappy about that. So maybe he scrapes up some money, and he comes in like 10 or 2 weeks later, and he has another $75. So what we've done, first thing we did is we subtracted off the $32.13, and then there was an accumulated interest of $14.96. So that says that there's only $27.91 left out of the $75 payment to put on the principal. So what I'm saying is, if they don't make a payment that's big enough to cover the interest, the next payment or payments, the first thing that the payment will go to is what I call the negative interest. Then it goes to the current interest, and then finally to the payment. Here I should really make a comment about the changes that I made to this program recently. 2 years ago, I kind of rewrote a lot of the whole system. So I call it version 2.012. The old version was 2.010. There never was an 011. The self-finance program had some significant changes, one of which is these two columns on here on the right. It used to be, in the original version, that if you had a negative interest or a penalty, I didn't know what to do with it, so I would simply add it on to the balance. I knew that was wrong, because you're not supposed to collect interest on negative interest or penalties. And so with this revision, I made sure that that was not the case. I do not collect interest on interest or interest on penalties. But what I did when I first came out with this version of the program is I said, first I'm going to subtract off the negative interest, then I'm going to subtract off the penalty from the payment, and then whatever's left over will go against the balance. In January of this year, the Wasada Front Row newsletter came out with an article that essentially said you can't do that. You cannot take the penalty off until the very end of the payments. That is to say, after the car is paid off, then you can have them make payments on the penalties. So I had to rewrite this. It took me a couple of weeks in April. I should say that although this came out in a January article, I didn't see the article until April. So now the penalty, if you put one in, will stick there until you're finally done paying off the whole loan. So let's just say that you get upset by the fact that the guy missed a month here in February. So you're going to go back into February, let's call it 1st, because he missed January, and you're going to give him a $20 penalty. There's two ways to do that. You can either enter a negative payment. That's what we did in the first version of the program, and that still works. Or you can simply enter a positive number and click the penalty button. So here you can see we added a penalty of $20, and there's the $20. But you can see it keeps on hanging in there. These are not additionals. These are just simply saying that is the total amount of the penalty. And if you do the math, you'll see that when the next payment was made, that the penalty did not get paid off. So essentially, you'll make all the payments till the end of the loan, when the balance goes to zero, and then they will still need to pay off the penalties before you will give them the title to the car. I'm going to describe this in much more detail in the next video. Most people really don't want to know about it, but just in case you do, it'll be there. You may see this funny little column over here. It's a bunch of codes that tell me what's going on. And if you want to know what the codes mean, you can click this little button, and you sort of get a little bit of a key to that. So the P0s, which you're seeing there, says that the payment was made in cash or credit card or whatever. The FP says that there's a penalty, and so on. The other thing that you'll see here is C-Type 1. C-Type 1 says that this loan is being processed according to the new way, that is to say, the version 2.012 version. Well, let's just say you have a whole bunch of loans that you did before the conversion to 2.012. Since there is going to be a difference in how things are calculated, that could be very confusing to the customer. If such a loan comes up, if you do enter data for a loan that existed prior to the conversion to 2.012, then you will see a C-Type 0. And all the calculations will continue to be done just the way they started. If for some reason you want to calculate this as a C-Type 0, just click this button. Just double-click that button, and all the calculations will be done in the old manner. I don't recommend you do it. On this penalty thing that I talked about, there is a significant monetary difference, and you really want to start doing that. This penalty fix will come out on distributions of the software dated after May 15th of 2025. There's this button called Standard. I'm not going to describe that until I get into the next video, where I go deeper into how all the calculations are made. There's one more thing that you need to know, and that is you can delete an entry that you made. So let's just say the guy who paid $75 came in and really paid $750, and somebody didn't type it right. So if you click on that line, you'll see that a delete button pops up. If you click on delete, that screen will go away, but you can bring it back, and now that item is gone. So now we can go back to February, whatever it was, and we will put in $750, which is what the guy meant to do, and just click that in. So this concludes the data entry part of this video. There will be a video that goes deeper into how you do all the calculations for penalties and interest and stuff. And there's one other thing that you can do here, and that is if you make a change to the details of the loan, there is a way to do that that almost nobody seems to know about. And I'll have a video on that also.